figured it out. Great. So welcome again, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. We're really thrilled to have just about 100 people in this Zoom room with us from different countries and around the world. Like, what a trip. So I'm gonna just kick things off by sharing a little bit. I'm gonna ask everyone to mute themselves so that hopefully folks can hear me. I'm going to kick things off by sharing a little bit about Shine Registry and how you can support Quaza Craft Brewery, who you're here to hear about today. Well, Shine Registry is a platform for women who are starting businesses to ask for things in the style of a wedding registry. The idea is that you can ask for a gravy boat when you're getting married in the US and a lot of other places. We should be able to use that tradition to support women who are starting other things. And so Shine Registry currently has a little over 260 founders who are on the site. They're asking for all sorts of support, whether it be equipment or social media engagement or monetary contributions to getting their businesses off the ground. And today we're really excited to use this event kind of as a virtual business shower for Quaza. And I'm dropping the link into the chat. I'm gonna do that again at the very end. But we're asking folks to create Shine Registry accounts and help us support the work that Quaza is doing. I'm already signed in, and I'm just gonna show folks really quickly how easy it is to just go to the registry. You get a little information, you get to see these beautiful faces over here. And when I scroll down, I'm not of the beer world, although this event is convincing me that I should start by drinking more beer and then slowly embed myself further. But I know that I can do all of these things to help support Quaza and show them some love online and help spread the word about what they're doing. And from there, I'm just fulfilling this ask. I do have to put my phone number in, so if anyone wants to text me after this, I guess you can do that. But there, it's that easy to show them some love and show them some support. We're actually getting ready to relaunch the site in the coming 2 months, but we're really excited about the type of support that we're able to generate for amazing things that people are doing all over the world, including in Rwanda, which I'm gonna stop sharing now and let the folks who you signed up to hear from today get started. I'm just gonna help unmute them really quickly. But that's that. Jesse, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm so excited to have you join us. I'm speaking to you from Kigali, Rwanda, and my name is Jesse Flynn, and I am a home brewer, which is how I became involved in this project. I'm also a landscape architect. I moved to Rwanda in 2017, and through a series of fortunate events, I became involved in this project, and I'm at this point the kind of chief convener and the shepherd of the project for the moment as we go along. Quaza?
Sure. Hi, everybody. This is so exciting. And it's good to see so many friends online who know that I can talk beer for hours. So this is exciting. My name is Kweza. I'm in Kigali, Rwanda, and also just love beer and love the idea of craft beer. I actually am at my office. I have a day job, but I do beer anytime, all the time. And also through a series of fortunate events. The moment I arrived in Rwanda, around the same time as Jessie as well, but I didn't know her, in 2017, there was this craft brewery project, and I was like, I want to be a part of it, and didn't hear about it for like 2 years, and then just heard about it in December last year, and here we are. So it's exciting to be able to share with you a little bit more about Queza and just what else we are brewing on this continent.
Oh, oh, sorry. Hi, everyone. My name is. The ladies say they love beer, but none of them are having some. Come now, ladies.
Imagine we're drinking tea.
Hi, everyone. My name is Apiwe Nguzani Mawela. I am calling in from South Africa, Johannesburg. I am also a brewmaster. Love beer. It's never too early for beer, Tyler, but I love beer like Quaza, and that's why we're here. And yeah, and I think I'm supposed to carry on here, Jessie.
Yes.
Okay. So I am a brewer based in South Africa. Like I said, I am the past chairperson of the Institute of Brewing and Distilling Africa section, the past chairperson of the Beer Association of South Africa, actually one of the founding chairpersons, and the chairperson, actually the director of the Craft Brewers Association. So I've been in beer for as far as I can remember. How I got into beer was actually by chance. I'm not as much as you see me drinking now, I don't think I drink every day, all day. I actually got into brewing through the love of science. I'm a microbiologist, so I've got honors in microbiology. And when I was in high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to study, and actually visited an open day at one of the universities here in Johannesburg. And on one of the stands, they were actually showcasing the study of microbiology and biotechnology, and they had a can of beer, a yogurt, and cheese. And for me, that's actually where it started. I was like, what? Like, you can study to make the products that people consume every single day. And then that's where my journey started. I studied microbiology, joined South African breweries, AB InBev, now owned by AB InBev. And then I became a brewer through the company, did my diploma in brewing through the Institute of Brewing and Distilling based in UK. And then I worked with SAB for about 8 years. And during that time, I actually, because I mean, everybody in Africa knows that as a young woman, you grow up with our mothers and grandmothers brewing our traditional beers. I mean, across the continent. Every young girl knows that as you grow up, it's something that you have to grow up into. You have to learn how to brew traditional beer. And for me at that time, I actually didn't know how to brew traditional beer, because it was during these times, I mean, a lot of young people see it as something that is for the old people. We've become too modernized, I would say, that a lot of the young Black African people are moving away from the villages into the towns, into the suburbs, and actually forgetting what our traditions are. So I was one of those. I actually didn't. And when I saw my parents, my grandmothers, and everybody brewing, I was like, whatever. It was only when I qualified as a brewer and I got my brewing certificate that I was like, you know what? I've actually studied brewing, and I understand the theory of brewing within the Western knowledge and terminologies, but I had no clue what African brewing was about, or how we brew beer in Africa, or what the principles are of brewing in Africa. And but that was back in 2008 when my dad, those who are listening, coming in Africa, don't know the African culture is, as Black people, everything that happens in our lives, we always have to thank the ancestors. Yeah, Quaza, you guys, I'm sure you do it in Zim also. If you get a job, you have to go back home in the village and slaughter something and brew a beer, thank the ancestors. So for me, when I got my first job just after university, having completed my diploma in brewing, my parents, my dad actually was the more traditional, called me and said, you know what, you need to come back home and we need to do something to thank the ancestors. And when I went home, I actually realized that I don't know how this beer is made. And for me, that didn't feel right. That was just wrong. I just couldn't understand how, as a young Black African, I can master the art of brewing clear beers, but have no clue how traditionally African beer is made. And that was, looking back, one of the main turning points for me as a brewer, that I needed to learn more. So my journey continued within the brewing space, worked for SAB. I left SAB, got into the craft beer space, and that was back in 2014, 2015. It was the time when craft beer was starting to pick up in South Africa. There were a lot of breweries opening up. And the reason why I moved, a lot of people asking me, like, Ampiwa, you make such good beers, why don't you open up your own brewery, you know? And I never thought that it was, I mean, at that time, I never thought it was something that one could do. So I left SAB, started a brewery with a group of friends. That was back in 2015. 2016, I attended a course at one of the universities, which was Thought Leadership for Africa's Renewal. And for me at that time, I felt that as Africans, we were not doing enough to own our space. That people talk of this having a seat on the table. I felt that we were just waiting to be invited on the table and didn't create that table ourselves. So that course for me was one of the 10 points, because it opened up me to the fact that for Africa's renaissance, we as Africans need to take charge. And looking back to what I do, which is beer, I was like, we have tourists coming into Africa, like in South Africa, for an example, going through the different craft breweries. Those who have never been to South Africa, we have about 230 craft breweries across the country, and then throughout the continent, as Kweza will talk about the different craft breweries within the continent. But craft brewing is starting to pick up. But for me, I realized a lot of people were still making the same styles. We're just doing a copy and paste. I mean, one of the most common styles was an American pale ale, which using American hops, or a German Weiss. And I was like, but why are we copying and pasting? If I was somebody coming from Germany and coming to South Africa, I'd want to experience Africa. And for me, I linked that back to obviously everything that I've studied, my passion for Africa. I'm very passionate about Africa, about brewing in Africa, and the fact that we need to show the world as Africans that we have it within Africa. We can make great beers that can actually compete on the global stage. So I started my company, Brewster's Craft. The ladies on the call will know Brewster is one of the terms that I use to describe a female brewer. And for me, if you look at my logo, it's just, for me, it speaks African. It speaks who I am. It speaks about traditional African brewing, but in the modern way, the modern terminologies. So the company I started in 2015, it was more about celebrating women in brewing. In my brewery, which I started in 2018, I employ mainly women, because I am a believer that we can't just talk, but we also need to be the ones that are actioning, and bring about that change that we want to see in the world. So I am for women. I support anything that has to do with women in beer in Africa as a whole, and that's how I met Jessie. Actually, have not physically met Jessie and Kweza. We've met virtually, but we have actually never shared a beer and actually seen each other face to face. But I feel like they're my sisters. I feel like I've known them for a very long time. As much as they are quite far, Rwanda from South Africa is a bit far. But I feel we very much connected. And when I first heard of Kweza and what the guys are doing there, I was blown away, because for me, through the years, I mean, I always see, those who know me will know the titles, the media headlines, the first black female to own a brewery in South Africa. Every time I see those headlines, I'm like, oh my God, like, should we really be having such headlines in 2020? It should be a norm. I mean, having female brewers should be a norm, because traditionally, I mean, going back in centuries, globally across the world, women have been brewing beer, whether in Africa, whether Asian or European, American, everywhere, women have always been the brewers. And obviously through the years, we've had brewing being industrialized and men taking over. But I think it's time for us to claim it back. And in Africa specifically, to this day, brewing is a role played by women. You can go to any part of the continent, and women are brewers. Name of my brewery is Brewster's Craft, and we are based in Johannesburg. So for me, I feel what Jessie and Kweza are doing is something that we need to support with all that we can. And I'm here to obviously support them. I feel it's time that we as Africans take charge, and obviously we'll need support from everybody else. And Kweza will talk about the brewing, the beers that we make. So I'm passionate about also using indigenous African ingredients. So here I've got, this is my brand, Dologazi Beer. Dologazi is actually my clan name. In Africa, the way we pay respect to a woman is called by their clan name. And my clan is Dolo, so I'm from the clan Dolo, and therefore I'm a Dologazi, so the Gazi is given to the female. So I named this brand after that. And for me, it was more about celebrating not just my lineage of women that have been brewers. I mean, I was taught brewing by my grandmother, but also to celebrate women in brewing as a whole, across the continent, across the globe. And I use a lot of African ingredients, like this is sorghum pilsner where I use some sorghum malt. And for me, it's about going back, just tying everything together, that we have all these ingredients that we have in Africa that we need to showcase more. We need to show the world that this is where we are, this is what we do in Africa. And when I was talking to Jessie about some of the beers that they're making, which she's going to talk about later, and the importance of linking it back to our roots and celebrating who we are. So that is why I'm here. And I think the women have a big role to play in brewing going forward. It's time that we claim it back. We've been doing it. Our foremothers have been doing it. We're doing it. Our grandkids will do it, and it's time that we actually take the stand and make sure that the world knows that as women we are here to stay. It's not just about having the first female-owned brewery in Rwanda. I mean, we should not be celebrating that. It should be a norm. We should have female brewers across the continent, across the globe. That it's a norm. So yeah, thank you so much.
Cheers up here. Thank you, Apiwe, for that setting of the stage. And I think you truly represent what we are trying to do, honoring the history of women brewing around the world and also now on the continent of Africa. So thank you for that. And check out Brewster's Craft in South Africa. That's Apiwe's brewery. She also has a laboratory. She does training. I actually was taking her brewing science, intro to brewing science course the other day. So check out her work. So now I'm going to give you a bit of a sense of what's happening with craft beer in Africa. And many of you are probably wondering, what is it that's different about craft breweries or craft beer in Africa? And I want to give you just a sense of the scale of the industry at the moment, what's unique about it, and also why it is exciting to be a brewster, so to be a brew mistress or brewster on the continent right now. So I'm not sure, but some of you may or may not know what makes a brewery craft and what makes it so exciting to drink a craft beer, and what about the other beer? Is it not craft? What makes it craft? The most important characteristics of what craft brewing is about, first of all, is that this is an independently owned business. So this is not owned by a multinational, it's not owned by your big Heinekens, you know the names, you know everybody. So this is independently owned, and also is much more smaller on the scale. So you hear the words nano brewery or micro brewery to describe how much beer is produced by some of these craft breweries around the world. Craft breweries are also really into innovation. So I would say the heart of craft brewery is innovation, the creativity, the excitement, and the vibe that comes with the idea of craft brewery, because there's a lot of experimentation in the process, and the process is also not heavily mechanized. So we use our hands a lot. There's a lot of touch, there's a lot of love, there's a lot of passion in every batch of beer that is brewed. So that's what makes it quite special in some way. And also there's a bit of hands-on in terms of picking your ingredients and how you play around with some of the non-traditional styles, and you can create your own style of beer. Apiwe just told you that she has a sorghum pilsner. Think about that for a minute, right? So we have the traditional pilsner, and then she put in the sorghum to put in the African twist, because sorghum is home. We have a lot of sorghum on the continent. So that's a little bit of what characterizes African craft beer, taking the traditional style and then mixing it up and putting our hands into it and all the love and the passion and making it truly, truly African. And if you have a sense at this point, I think the South African craft brewery industry is one of the most mature on the continent so far. As Apiwa said, there are about 260 craft breweries in South Africa and about 1,000 home brewers. So that's the most mature on the continent, if you want to think about it. And in terms of market share, perhaps a percentage of South African beer is craft, you can argue. And to give you a comparison in the US, there are about 8,000 craft breweries across the US now. So your brew pubs, your microbreweries, your nano breweries, and they account for about 13.6% of the market share of all the beer that's consumed in the US. So you can see in terms of scale, a percent to 13.6. But this is what is exciting about the craft brewery industry, because it's about trying to get that market share, to have people drink more exciting beer. And I love the story of Sam Adams, because when Sam Adams was founded in 1987, he said, I just want people to not drink boring beer. And there we are. If you look at the Boston Brewing Company and the tradition that they created of diversifying the kind of beer that we love and love in America, that's the idea. So it's the craft, it's the love, it's the hands-on, the ingredients. That's what makes craft beer. And now on the continent, what's unique about us, right? Why are we all here? I think the most important thing that excites me when I travel across the continent is each time I arrive at night, whenever I arrive, I always ask for the local beer. And over 90% of the time, it's always a lager, right? It's always a lager, it's the tropics, it's exciting. You are in Casablanca, you drink Casablanca. You're in Zim, you drink your Castle Light. It's all these traditional German beers because of the influence of colonization on the continent. And you can also argue, a lager is super refreshing. I can take a lager any day now. But now if we want to really dig deeper into the styles, because these are the styles that were also commercialized. But what has been exciting in the last few years is that if you go to Joburg, you can spend all the time you spend in Joburg and never have to drink any commercialized beer because of the industry. So now what I think for us is exciting and what's unique is that we can even ask in the different cities that we travel or where we live to say, so what is the equivalent of craft beer in Kigali, for example? We have Virunga here in Kigali. It's a little bit of like an amber dark ale and also like a crafty lager. And that's our craft here because that's what's different from what is normal. The other thing as well is that craft beer in Africa does not exist in a vacuum. Our grandparents and great-grandparents have been brewing for centuries, as Apiwa said, the traditional beer. Somebody dies, we brew beer. You get a new job, you brew beer. And it's women who always brew beer because beer is actually is a laborious process, and because women had always been home. So they were the ones always making sure that the yeast is good and then it doesn't overeat all the sugars. So women have been a really, really important part of brewing. And what we love is the fact that we're building upon this tradition of women brewing for centuries. And that's what makes it exciting to be brewing at this time on the continent. The other thing is ingredients. So I'm going to read something for you here, which makes it even more exciting for me to be brewing at this time on the continent. So one of the things that the South African craft brewing scene does is the African Beer Cup. I'm actually not sure when it was started, but it's an annual competition where people across South Africa and now across the continent, they ship in their beers and then they test them and they get awards. So think of your Great American Beer Festival, right? Or go to Colorado and come back and know that Allagash has won. That's my favorite beer, by the way, I had to say that. But the African Beer Cup, so in 2019, I'm gonna read this actually. The medals went to a mango IPA from Battle Brewery in Kenya and a coffee-infused imperial stout containing sorghum alongside malted barley from Nigeria's only microbrewery, Bature. Give me a moment. Do you hear how delicious this beer sounds? And for me, what's exciting about that is the use of the local ingredients, all the cocoa in West Africa, all the ginger you can think about, all the mangoes on this continent, they win, right? So for us, that's what's exciting, to use all the local ingredients that we have available and try to localize our flavors and try to also go with the local palettes of what people are familiar with. Like a couple of weeks ago, Jesse and we made a pineapple and passion fruit ale. Because we have lots of pineapples and lots of passion fruit in Kigali, and that's what we made. So for us, that's what's exciting, to use the ingredients, the flavors that are exciting to us that are here, and also the traditional ingredients, the sorghum, the maize, the millets, and actually another perfect example in terms of using sorghum is Inland Brewery in Ghana, where they actually use sorghum in most, if not all, of their recipes. So trying to really localize the brewing and also the craft that comes from the traditional brewing. The other thing that I wanted to say, Apiwe brought this up, is the fact that we are reaching back to our traditions. And if some of you are familiar with the idea of Sankofa, so if you look up Sankofa, is from the Akan people in Ghana, where there's this little bird actually looking backwards and holding an egg. So it's the idea of reach back and get it, or it's like reflecting on all the things, taking a moment to reflect on our history and bring it back into the modern. And I think that Sankofa is exactly what is happening with the craft beer scene on the continent, because of how we are reaching deeper into the traditional ways of brewing and also the traditional ingredients. In fact, there's a new brewery in DC, maybe a couple years ago, couple years old now, called Sankofa. And the two founders actually have roots in West Africa. And they have this hibiscus beer where they use hibiscus, they use kola nut. So I think that Sankofa Brewery is not female owned, but the idea is that even when you look across the US, if you look at the breweries that are owned by Black people, there's a lot of that reaching back. There's a lot of Sankofa happening, of saying our roots are in Africa, and how do we bring that to bear even onto the craft beer scene in the US. And I think for me, that is super, super exciting. And I know there are so many people on this call who are joining in from the US, Black sisters, Black brothers, who are just like, we wanna know what's happening on the motherland. We are together on that. We are also trying to reach back while on this continent, while we are also trying to reach this direction. And I think that energy is just amazing for us to be a part of. And it's exciting to actually have Queza be born out of that energy and be born out of those vibes, standing on the shoulders of people like Apiwe who just are doing it. You know, I talk so much about beer, but for me, Queza was just an opportunity to be like, you know what, I'm not talking about beer anymore. I always tell this to Jesse, I'm not talking anymore, I want to brew. So this is what brought me here, and it's just so exciting to be able to connect on what is happening on the continent. Actually, Emily, if you can put up that slide with the map, just to give you a sense of some of, yeah, there you go. So if you look, so it's either we have very little information on North Africa, or there has not been much happening in terms of craft brewing up north. But what you also find is that some of these large multinational companies, what Heineken would do, for example, and this is what they did in Rwanda, where they bought the local subsidiary to actually make Heineken here, instead of it being shipped from somewhere else. And you know, those green bottles and oxidation, they don't get along. So you want your brown bottle. So sometimes what these multinational companies do, they actually buy the local subsidiary and then make sure that the beer is actually brewed in country. And this is what they did in Rwanda. So we can argue that the water is at least Rwandan, right, for the Heineken that we drink here. But I can't vouch for the quality though, and I don't work for Heineken. So if you look on West Africa there, this is where Bature Brewery is. I know Peace is probably online. Shout out to Bature. They are the ones who made that Imperial Stout that I was just drooling about earlier. You also have Ibadan Brewing Company in Lagos. You have Django Brothers. You have Inland Microbrewery in Ghana. So that's all in West Africa there. And then if you come down to the east of the continent, this is where we are in Rwanda. Rwanda is a little tiny country in the middle kind of heart of Africa there. Ethiopia actually has quite a number of diverse beers and brewing companies, actually, a combination of those local subsidiaries bought by these multinationals, and a little bit of craft as well. You have Attendees Brewing Company in Tanzania, you have Twiga in Arusha, Tanzania as well, Butler in Kenya. You have Keroche Brewery. I used to brew over Keroche over many, many years when I discovered this brewing company. So this woman has been, it's actually female owned. This woman has been in business for many, many years, Keroche Brewers, and she has managed to actually get quite a bit of the market share of beer in Kenya. And much respect to Keroche breweries. And then you have 254 also in Kenya, and you have Banange in Uganda. So that's a little bit of the east. And then now you're gonna have Queza in Kigali, which is very exciting. If you go towards the south, this is where it's happening, right? I'm from Zim, so hey, we go down south. This is where everything is happening. South Africa is just putting us on the map with craft beers. And you also see a lot of craft beers from South Africa across the southern tip of the continent there. There's in Namibia, Joe's Beer House, you see it represented over there. This is also a good map history. This is the map of Africa, folks. So I'm very proud. You also have the River Brewing Company in Zimbabwe, and so many breweries in South Africa, as you can see, across the coast of South Africa. Brewsters, you have a Piwe, Bearded Brew at Hops End, Clockwork, Brauhaus, The Secret Garden, endless list in South Africa. So this is a little bit of what is happening with craft beer on the continent right now. And excited to have everybody joining in to really have a better understanding of what is going on. I'm gonna stop here and looking forward to the Q&A, and Jesse, take it away. Now we're gonna talk about Queza, zoning into Rwanda with Queza.
All right, thank you, Apiwe and Shadzat. It's just so nice. I'm seeing all of you on this, and it's really share my screen with you all and give you a little presentation about the Craft Brewery here in Cali. Just a moment. All right, can you all see my screen? Hopefully my internet is acting accordingly. Is it okay? So, Chiad, somebody give me a yes. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and say, so this is Kweza Craft Brewery. We're in the middle of Rwanda, as Chiaza showed. We're in the middle of the continent, and we are the first craft brewery here in Rwanda, and we are so far women-owned and women-led. The project background is that it started with a Kickstarter campaign with Bose Brewery in Canada back in 2016, and Fina Ueneza, a Rwandan woman who is an entrepreneur, had run a restaurant, and together they came up with the idea of starting a craft brewery here in Rwanda. So they started a Kickstarter campaign with the vision of establishing a women-owned craft brewery. And the reason a women-owned craft brewery, here's some statistics for you. So some of this is US-based, obviously, because that's where a lot of the data has been collected. Only 2% of US breweries are women-owned in the US. Only 1% of US breweries are Black-owned in the US. Of head brewers, 7.5% are female, and production managers, 8.9% female. And then going into beyond breweries, into just women in business, only 2.7% of capital investment globally goes to female founders, despite the fact that 63% of companies perform better than just all male team members. It's not to say you gentlemen are not doing your jobs, it's to diversify and to have us all around the table. And so this is the statistics we're working with, and what we really want to be able to do to improve the ratios of women and minorities, and well, in Africa, it's majorities. So it's having African women owning African breweries. So all of this caught the attention, obviously, of the world. It was in Forbes magazine, National Geographic, and really caught the attention of the world in this idea. So FINA unfortunately needed to step away from the project. So I'm the shepherd in the meantime. We are looking to be Rwandan women owned and led. And so I'm just kind of the convener for the time being, getting things started. And so I just wanted to talk about some of the challenges about starting a brewery in Rwanda, things like production. So malt, for those of you not familiar with malt, it's, you know, one of your very basic ingredients. It's usually barley that has been sprouted and then dried and roasted. We do grow barley in Rwanda, but we don't have any malt facilities. So therefore we don't have the basic ingredient here. Things like beer bottles. We don't have any sandy rivers or any ocean where it's landlocked. We don't have any beaches. So if you don't have sand, which is a critical ingredient for glass, you can't have bottles. We don't have bauxite for cans. So then, you know, that leaves us in a, how are we going to get this to people? There's also no other craft breweries. We are the first one. There are two large breweries here, but that means that there's not a draft beer culture here. There's not beer taps at every pub. So being able to even share kegs is difficult. There's also the issue of regulation. Here in Rwanda, there's a 60% excise tax on beer if you are making it of imported ingredients like barley malt. There's a 30% tax if you use local ingredients. We're also the very first in the industry, which has some issues in that regulations here for breweries are built based on large scale breweries. And for example, a brewery automatically needs to be in an industrial zone, which a craft brewery obviously is a little bit different of a scenario. And talking about women in the industry, having no craft beer industry here in Rwanda means that there's no training in kind of the regulated level of craft beer. Lots of people brew at home, but the level of sanitation, production, being able to sell at a public scale, that level of kind of exposure isn't available. Also, this is a whole new industry in the country. So it's extremely risky to enter a whole new industry, and especially for women in a conservative culture. But if we look at those as opportunities, there's the idea of what is beer in Rwanda. I believe, so Apiwe and Chiadza spoke some to this about, are we trying to make German beer, or what is beer here? So like Chiadza and I made the passion fruit, pineapple passion fruit beer. You know, we have sorghum, we have ginger, there's so many fruits. So what can we ferment? You know, what is beer? What are we trying to accomplish? And things like I said, there's no glass, but there's lots of soil. We have lots of clay. So can we use pottery in historic beer storage? We also have the opportunity to really set the craft beer precedent bar here and really lead the industry as Quaza. Regulation-wise, while the excise tax is hard, that is great in that 81% of Rwandans rely on agriculture. So inherently the tax structure supports us trying to find resources here in Rwanda and really build out on that and make our beer as locally sourced as possible, so that you don't come all the way to Rwanda, say, and have a German beer. You want to come to Rwanda and have a uniquely Rwandan experience. Being able to create a craft beer, an African craft beer trail, where everywhere you go is different beers. Like as Chiadza was saying, when you go, what's your local beer? So really it's, you know, that while it can be a disincentive, it's also an amazing incentive for trying to support local livelihoods and local agriculture. And Rwanda's government is non-corrupt and wonderful, and really working with us on trying to figure out what does craft beer, how do the standards apply, and how do we make sure that we ensure quality throughout the supply chain. And going into women in the industry, the sorghum and banana beer that we've been talking about, like a home brewing tradition, really does have a lot of people exposed to brewing, and they understand that basics. And now it's just working with different people like Apiwe to be able to train people up into the level of being able to make that a licensed product for sale, so that women can go from the home domestic scale to the commercial scale and make that profit their own. And we also have a lot of support from the government of Rwanda and the Rwandan population in general about women's involvement, employment, empowerment, and there's an incredible entrepreneurial spirit here. And also the picture on this page on the top, in the top left, kind of in the middle, that is wild Rwandan ginger that natively grows here. And so things like that, how do we take plants that natively grow here that both support biodiversity and make a delicious beer? So our current status, we are at pilot scale. Just last week, we received our pilot equipment from Dematech in Nairobi. And so we have enough ingredients to brew 50-liter batches for about 3 or 4 months to really test our recipes and see how the research and development, really hits the market on different products. We have put a deposit on full equipment from Fraser's Folly in South Africa. So we're really excited that this brewery is, gonna have its home in Kigali one of these days. And that's why we're talking to you all to see if we can get support to bring it home. Our possible location is here in Kigali, and we are just speaking with the city right now to ensure, as I mentioned, that regulations are built for large commercial breweries. So being able to put a craft brewery, which many of you, understand that it's more of a restaurant scale. So how do we get the permission to be able to put a restaurant scale operation in more of a residential area so that there is foot traffic and an experience and a nice place to be in the center of Kigali with another experience. Some brew pub precedents here, just to give you an idea of what we're looking at building. And I think I mentioned before, I'm a landscape architect and work in design field. So we have some pretty good people interested in this and a lot of women on the design teams looking at this. So the idea is to connect to craft, to really put the beer and even the building to say, this is what things are made of. This is how people's hands build this and are involved in this. So it's to get people up close and personal with the beer experience, unlike the mass-produced lager industry. And so there will be brewery tours and examples of what is sorghum, what is cassava, what is ginger, and how does it turn into this tasty beverage you're drinking. And we'll also be building out beer gardens, and really Rwanda has amazing year-round weather. Visit Rwanda. So it's really being able to expand out and give those views and that experience of Kigali and beer in a different way than people currently experience beer. So our next steps are really R&D, really working on our recipes, market response, working on our government certification, constructing our brewery, and getting under operations. So we are seeking donations, investments, resources, connections, you name it. This is kind of instead of a barn raising, we're doing a brewery raising. So we welcome you all to be a part of that. This is a picture of International Women's Collab Brew Day. It's every year on Women's Day. And so this year is early March. And so we all got together and brewed a traditional sorghum beer. The two women sitting on the far left here are traditional sorghum brewers. They've been brewing for many years and were teaching us all kind of how to go about making traditional sorghum beer. And so it was just a fun experience to be able to make something together, and we were sampling all different styles of beer. And so we welcome you all to be a part. There's some contact information you'll also be followed up with later. And that's where I will get off of this. And I think we're gonna open it to Q&A.
Thank you so much, Jessie. I just want to take a quick note to say that we've been getting messages that the Zoom room got capped at 100. I take full responsibility for this. Like I said, we have not hosted a very large event previously and didn't realize that folks would get shut out. We are going to share the recording, and I'm going to try to convince folks if we maybe can do this event again. But I do want to apologize if anyone's getting messages from friends that they have severe FOMO. I would too if I hadn't had a chance to be a part of this. I'm dropping the link for Quaza's Shine Registry profile again in the chat. And we'll also be looking to the chat for questions that folks are writing in now for our amazing speakers today. So if anyone has a question, now is the time to drop it in the chat. I can also start. Do you guys want to share what your first beer story is, or what is it that made you really excited about drinking beer in the first place? I think we heard a little bit of this from what you were saying earlier, but if you could share a favorite beer story, that'd be really fun.
I love telling this story.
Shanta, I love your story.
So for me, so I grew up in Zimbabwe, and obviously, generally in the African culture, beer and women is not something that is like, like this. So I never drank beer when I was growing up. I only started drinking maybe a little bit of Bud in college. And then I remember being in Boston, and one of my roommates brought an Allagash White because he had a friend who worked at Allagash in Maine. And I remember tasting Allagash White and asking myself, why did people say beer tasted bad? I swear, I got so hooked onto Allagash to the point where for my 25th birthday, I spent the weekend in Maine and spent the whole day at Allagash to drink all their beer and just like fan on Allagash. And even up to today, their story for me is one of the most amazing stories about craft brewery in America, actually. Because this guy had the vision, right? 25 years later, he has just been making these amazingly delicious Belgian-centered ales and just pushing the limits. In fact, this is what brought me to craft beer. For me, it was the innovation, the pushing the limits, and I found a lot of liberation from that. So in some way, my beer story is my liberation story. That's my favorite beer. So I can drink Allagash any day, anytime. And that's like if I drink something, I'm like, oh, it tastes like Allagash. And all my friends on this call I have ordered Allagash for them. So
I think you have for me. For folks who don't know, we used to be neighbors and we went to college together. And so she's been my inspiration for many of beer that I've ordered at a bar. So this is, we have a question from Carly Smith. What suppliers are you working with currently, and how is the hop industry in Africa?
I think I'll take that, and then I think pass to probably Pue, because there's also another question for Pue coming up here. So the suppliers we're working with so there's two different camps, right? There's the kind of traditional German beer, and so for that, there's one supplier in East Africa for craft breweries, and that's Demetec. And so that's who we're working with. They have Weyermann malts, and they have a few typical Yakima hops and different hop suppliers. So we are currently using them for the more traditional beers, in that it's, for somebody like myself who's brewed that more than anything, it's more predictable. So what that allows me to do is to start brewing and giving beer to people to just get more of a honing in on taste. Like, do people prefer more stouts or ales or different tastes? But then for things like the pineapple passion fruit beer that Chad and I made, and the ginger beer, that's just local suppliers, local agriculturalists. And so we're looking to, right now we're brewing on a very, very small scale, but one of the things that we'll be doing as we scale up is looking to source all of our supplies from women's cooperatives. So the Rwandan economy, a lot of it is built around the co-op scale of farming, cooperative scales. And so a lot of them are organized around women. And so we're looking for suppliers for, say, people who can always supply us pineapples, ginger, et cetera, and that we know what demand we'll be creating so that we can create a schedule for the agriculture. And so that's some of what we'll be looking into. Hops don't grow in Rwanda. They need a long daylight. They need 15 hours of daylight. The most we get is 12. We always have 12 hours of daylight. So they need both daylight, as well as they usually need a cold snap in order to produce enough of the hop cones in order to make it viable to pull enough of the cones to be able to brew with. And so in terms of suppliers, that's that's some of what we're working on, is being able to produce locally. And one of the things we'd really love to do is to be able to malt locally. But there is nobody in the country that's really producing malt at a quality level enough a scale that we would be able to use and keep consistency. And so that's something that we'll be looking into, either having a partner set up a malting facility or potentially doing a small craft scale malting facility ourselves, so that we can malt sorghum and barley and wheat and do everything ourselves for local agricultural products that already grow, but we just need to do the processing of them. So I don't know, Apiwe, you also want to talk about your supply chains, and then there was a secondary question here to you about if you can describe the beer you're brewing now and compare that to the map where you were brewing for so many years.
Thanks, Jessie. I am on mute. I think Lucy just posted a response. There was an article that she wrote for Good Beer Hunting, which was actually covered some of my experiences or history and how we actually do the traditional brewing. So if anybody, because it could take the whole day, so I don't think we have the whole the whole day. But for me, what was quite interesting was just touching briefly is how, once I started learning more about traditional brewing, how similar the principles were to clear beer making. And I remember actually asking my mom or aunts, like, how do you know when it's time is right for you to how do you know it's the right temperature? And traditionally they just feel it with an elbow. So like, no, you feel it, you know when it's the right temperature. And like, how do you know when your yeast is healthy? And like, you can see. And for me, that was what fascinates me about the traditional African brewing, the fact that for centuries these women have been making good quality beers without the science, without knowing exactly what is happening, but they just knew. And they knew that if you don't do it that way, then the beer is not going to come out right. And that's just something that for me is just so amazing. And I wish it's something that, we're talking with Lucy the other day, that some of these are actually not documented. And that's the sad part, that a lot of these traditional brewing methodologies are actually not documented. And it's something that, I hope in my lifetime, I managed to put a lot of it on paper, black and white, so that generations to come know how we've been bringing Africa and how things work, and how you guys can easily find that information, which is very difficult to find at the moment. And then in terms of the suppliers and hops, so a question around hop growing in South Africa. Our hops are grown currently in a small town called George in the Western Cape, which through the years of trial by the South African breweries, they found out that was the most ideal area in the country to grow hops, based obviously on the altitude and the salt and the rainfall and an end. So they, through the years, even when you go down through George, they've got these artificial lights that when the sun sets, they switch on, so that to actually extend the daylight. And our hops, we currently exporting. I think SAB does export some of the hops. I use mainly South African hops in my products. My favorite being Southern Passion. I love African Queen. There's a hop called African Queen, which I also love, citrus kind of flavors. And on the sorghum pilsner, I use a hop called Southern Aroma, which has got a SARS parent. So it's got that heavy, earthy kind of aromas which complement the sorghum malt. And lastly, before I, sorry, Emily, there was a question on how does sorghum taste like. I think Lucy does mention it on her article also, brewmistress.co.za, that's where she blogs. There was a question on who writes about beer in Africa. Lucy does it. She's our storyteller on this end of the world, and she writes about what we're doing in South Africa and Africa as a whole. And then she actually did also an article on tasting traditional African beer and her experience. Obviously, she's helped coming from UK and have traveled a bit of the globe and finally landing in South Africa. So she came with the taste buds that I grew up drinking the products. For me, it's a nice sour. If you've drank a sour beer and you love sour beers, you're gonna love our traditional beers because most of them tend to be a bit sour. We use a lot of traditionally it was used as a food substance, so it's quite rich. It's quite healthy with very low levels of alcohol. So yeah, but you have to come to Africa to try it. I mean, I can't describe. I cannot describe it enough. You have to come here.
Well, that there is another question of a lot of folks are asking about how folks who are in the United States might be able to try some of these beers. Like, is there an ordering process for folks who are international? It's a little hard to get out of the States right now with coronavirus. Can folks enjoy this at home?
Yeah, no, it is obviously at the moment with everything that's happening globally, it's difficult, but it is something that I had started working on to try to see where we can showcase our products, because I mean, like I said earlier on, for me it's about telling our story to the world, showing that we in Africa are actually making great beers, and we have to make sure the beers go to everybody across the globe.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah.
I'm an importer. I'm an importer of craft beer to the US. So I was just texting you privately because there are ways to get your beer here as a, like you said, as a showcase, and I would love to help with that.
Well, hello.
Yeah, I just texted
What a
you.
delight.
Yes, absolutely. It's my absolute pleasure. And we're a women-owned exporting management consultant company, and we are trying to help showcase and share culture with craft brewers from around the world. So we're able to export and import, and so we can help you with that, or anyone that is interested. But I haven't come across any craft beer from Africa, and I think that would be very interested. And I saw some folks in New York that will be interested, and so we certainly can make some connections in New York. We've worked with the likes of Shelton Brothers. So we'd love to be able to help. Absolutely.
What a fun, unexpected treat. Yeah. We'll make sure your contact information is shared with the folks who spoke today. If I feel like you're on the phone, but if you could put your contact information in the chat, both for,
of course,
for everyone, that's very fun. I think we're coming up against, I know that the event online said that we would go to 1:30, but we were planning on wrapping up. It's kind of dependent on QAs and also how the hosts feel. How's our panel feeling? Do you guys want to take a few more questions, or?
I'm okay.
Oh, I'm getting a thumbs up. Okay. Okay, great. Because we have more questions. Another question, how can we start getting more information on traditional brewing in Africa and elsewhere on brewing curriculums? This is from Nyla King. Nyla King, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. She wrote the IBD, Harriet Watt, and others all tend to be very Eurocentric. So I'm wondering if folks on the panel have recommendations. Also, if other folks here have recommendations they want to throw in the chat, that would be great too.
I'll respond. Unfortunately, we don't have much information recorded on paper on traditional brewing, and it's something that I said earlier on with Lucy has also been writing a lot just on how we brew, and I've also kind of shared some of my recipes with her that she's published on some of her articles. I am actually registering for my master's degree next year, where I want to focus more on the traditional beer brewing and actually understand the science that goes into traditional brewing, because it's when you read through the process, I mean, I remember when Lucy was writing an article, and we kept on going back and forth as to like what actually happens at specific steps, because there's a lot of souring, natural souring, there's natural fermentation that takes place, and traditionally, in the rural areas, in the villages, they would have a hut which was known as the brewing room, where that's where the woman would actually make the beer, and no one else was allowed into that room, and she was the only one that went in there. And because in the room you had the natural microflora that existed there, so it was the same bacteria, same yeast, same that would make sure that her brews are consistently the same throughout, So they understood that the old women understood the importance of that. You have a culture, you have to just maintain that pure culture, whatever it is. You just need to make sure that it's the same, so that your beer, your brewing consistency, you maintain your consistency of your brews, and that information is, to my knowledge, is not well documented. And also, what I've found is that, like in South Africa, we've got about 11 tribes, and that's just in South Africa. When you go to, let's say, Rwanda, they've got, as much as they all Rwandans, but within Rwanda, there's different tribes, and the different tribes all brew differently. So you might find that I'm from the Quaza tribe, we do it in a certain way, which is the way I was taught to do it. But as I got exposed to other tribes, and I learned that actually other people follow a different methodology, even though we end up with a similar product. Taste is different, but it's all traditional African beer. It's all umqombo. It's all using sorghum, but the taste and the consistencies and the sour levels differ. And for me, that was like the question: like, how do we? That information is not readily available. It's not documented, and I feel that we, as Africans, as we getting more modernized and moving to the towns and forgetting about our traditions. The young people are not wanting to know how traditional beer is made, and we are therefore losing that tradition. The mothers, the daughters are not there for the tradition to be passed on to them, which means that like in 20, 50 years time, there won't be any women left who can brew traditional beers, because everybody would have been too modernized to worry about brewing the stuff. And us creating these new recipes and coming up with ways of preserving our culture and preserving these traditions, which will ensure that it's never forgotten. It's not forgotten in history. It remains, and that's something that in my lifetime I want to hopefully put on paper.
It looks like there's someone in the chat who might want to help you with that. Tyler, I see you shared an email. That's awesome. We'll make sure to try to connect you later on in particular. This is great. Yeah, folks are dropping a lot of other like resources that they're looking to share and volunteering to help document a lot of these processes. I'm dropping the Shine Registry link one more time. Also, I think we're kind of wrapping up with most of the questions. I'm not sure if I missed any in the chat, but Jesse, Kweza, do you want to say anything as we kind of wind down?
I think I'm curious to know who else is online who's brewing and what they're brewing. Just, a little shout out. Maybe the chat does that, right?
I think a few people have mentioned, but
brewers online, and it's just exciting to be able to connect on all this. And shout out to our sponsors as well.
oh yeah,
what do you call them? Partners for this event.
I'm gonna pull up this slide really quick.
Yeah, we have some amazing partners for this event.
Thank you to all those folks. We are sharing, we are going to be sharing the recording of this, especially since we know we had some complications with the RSVPs. And again, I'm so sorry about that. I'm also going to put links to all these folks into the chat as well. We really owe a lot to these groups for both promoting the event that we had today, and also generally being really, really supportive of the work that Quaza is doing. This will also be included in the follow-up email in case anyone else wants to know more about them or know more about ways that they can continue to keep in touch with everything that everyone's doing.
Yeah, I think one other thing, just to be contextual, and I know Apiwe can speak a bit to this, is the impact of COVID-19 on the craft brewery industry. And South Africa in particular has had alcohol bans, which have just really impacted the industry. Maybe Apiwe, you want to say a word about that?
Yeah, it's quite stressful. If you see me drinking, I'm actually drinking, downing my thirst. In South Africa, with the COVID-19 pandemic, our government decided that on end of March, we had 21 days of lockdown, where alcohol sales, production, transportation were banned, and that lasted 2 months. We were allowed to trade for a month. And then we had another ban. So we're currently on an alcohol ban where we're not allowed to sell. This has affected our industry quite badly, where it's very bad. I mean, there's people closing breweries at the moment because there's no source of income whatsoever. Like we can't even sell at least bottles or I know some countries, they actually allowed some off consumption where people can drink at home. In South Africa, there is not even we're not even allowed to buy anyway. So it's very, very bad. And it's actually I think there was an article that Lucy also did recently, which talks about the future, what the future looks like, and it doesn't look good at all. So I think after the pandemic and everything, once everything has settled down, I think the industry, our industry, those who have survived, will need all the support we can get from across, from consumers. And I think also, I mean, I know there's a lot of wine being exported from South Africa. So if you are in a country where you have access to South African wine, please do support, because the industry, the alcohol industry as a whole, is suffering quite badly. It's actually very, very sad.
And I also just wanted to say thank you to Emily and Anne and Shine Registry. The platform, just the concept, the first time that Quaza introduced me to Emily, and when she first started talking about just this concept, like that concept of we support people in marriage and babies and other major milestones in life, and the concept of female founding, recognizing that and helping each other is just such a novel concept. And I encourage you all that if you are starting businesses to check out Shine Registry as a way to help get started and kind of get out there. And it's on this, and hearing everybody's interest. I mean, women in brewing, it's just, it's a whole new ball game that we're in. I don't know, I love the fact that, I'm sad that we maxed out, and so that we had, Emily said, I think we had 350 people registered, and only 100 people were able to get in. So I'm glad you guys are here, got in early. But I'm just so glad that we ran into the problem of all problems. So we'll be sharing out information. And just to say thank you to Quaza and Apiwe for putting in all the thought and effort into this. It's fun and such a learning experience all along. And so I hope you'll join us in whatever way you can, whether it's moral support or being an investor or connecting us to people. Our dream is to really see Quaza get up and running and become a Rwandan women-led brewery that slowly makes unique, awesome beer. So yeah, help us out whatever way you can. And I'm just glad to see you all, and thank you to everyone.
Yeah, I want to second that. Thanks.
And Emily, did you want to look quickly at the last registry to leave people with something that they can follow up with if they want?
I think you're breaking up a little bit, but I think I heard most of that. We will be sending out an email with more information about how you can stay in touch with both what Shine Registry is doing and what Quaza is doing. I know I've been spamming the chat a little bit with this link, but I'm going to do it again. And I just want to second what Jesse said. I mean, this is a very good problem to have too many, an abundance of people who wanted to join and not enough space for them. But I really appreciate folks for being a part of this with us as we grow and as we learn. So